The Pendle Witch Trials of 1612 stand as one of the most notorious witchcraft trials in English history. They took place in the rural and isolated area of Pendle Hill in Lancashire, England, and involved 12 individuals, most of them women, who were accused of using witchcraft to harm others. The events of this trial are not only significant for their time, but also provide a glimpse into the social, political, and religious climate of 17th century England, a period fraught with fear, superstition, and deep religious divides. This tale of the Pendle Witches reveals the tragic consequences of fear, suspicion, and the desire for control in a community on the edge of poverty and upheaval. The early 17th century in England was a time of social unrest and religious tension. King James dreamt, who had ascended the throne in 1603, was deeply interested in witchcraft and the supernatural, having published a book on the subject called Demonology in 1597. He believed that witches were in league with the devil and sought to destroy Christianity. This belief permeated society, particularly in areas like Lancashire, which was seen as a hotbed of Catholic recusancy, a term for those who refused to conform to the Protestant faith imposed by the monarchy. Lancashire was also a deeply rural region with high levels of poverty. The area around Pendle Hill was particularly remote, and the inhabitants were largely uneducated and prone to superstition. This combination of religious suspicion, isolation, and poverty made the community especially susceptible to accusations of witchcraft. People often believed that sickness, death, or misfortune could be the result of malevolent magic, particularly in such desperate times when the line between survival and starvation was thin. The events leading to the Pendle Witch Trials began with two families, the Demdikes and the Chattixes, who lived in the area around Pendle Hill. Both families were poor and, by the standards of the time, on the margins of society. These families had long been suspected of practicing some form of folk magic or healing, a common practice in rural areas where access to doctors was rare. Such practices were often tolerated or even relied upon, but they became dangerous when associated with harm or malevolent magic. The key figure in the Demdike family was an old woman named Elizabeth Southerns, better known as Old Demdike. She was in her 80s by the time of the trial and had a reputation as a cunning woman or local healer. Her counterpart in the Chattix family was Anne Whittle, an old woman known as Chattix. These two families were rivals, and their mutual enmity likely played a role in their downfall. The immediate cause of the Pendle Witch Trials can be traced to a confrontation between Alison Device, the granddaughter of Old Demdike, and a peddler named John Law. In March 1612, Alison encountered Law on the road and asked him for some pins. He refused, and shortly thereafter he fell ill, suffering what appeared to be a stroke. Alison, likely under pressure from the community and her own belief in her guilt, confessed to having cursed him, thus causing his illness. John Law's son reported the incident to the local magistrate, Roger Nowell, who was eager to investigate. Alison was summoned for questioning, and during her interrogation, she not only confessed to bewitching Law, but also implicated members of her family and the rival Chattix family. This set off a chain reaction of accusations and confessions that would lead to the trial of 12 individuals. Roger Nowell's investigation into Alison Device's confession revealed a web of accusations and counter-accusations between the Demdike and Chattix families. Alison's grandmother, Old Demdike, was accused of having been a witch for many years, and her confession, likely given under duress, only deepened the case against her and others. Demdike admitted that she had made a pact with the devil many years earlier, describing how she had given her soul in exchange for magical powers. Anne Whittle, Chattix, was also accused by her own daughter, Anne Redfern, who stated that her mother had used witchcraft to murder a local man named Robert Nutter. The Nutter family had long-standing grievances with the Chattix family, and their testimony played a significant role in Chattix's conviction. Similarly, Alison Device's brother, James Device, and her mother, Elizabeth Device, were also implicated in the case. What made the Pendle trials unique was that these confessions were often self-incriminating, suggesting a strong belief in witchcraft among the accused themselves. In a society where religion and superstition were deeply intertwined, even the accused seemed to believe in their own guilt, or at least the possibility of having been bewitched by the devil. This belief, combined with intense pressure from authorities, led to confessions that would seal the fate of many. One of the most pivotal moments in the trial was the so-called Malkin Tower meeting. While old Demdike, Alison Device and others were imprisoned, Elizabeth Device organised a gathering at Malkin Tower, the family home. The meeting was interpreted by the authorities as a witches' sabbath, a gathering where witches supposedly communed with the devil. In reality, the meeting was likely a desperate attempt by the family to provide food for their imprisoned relatives. However, this gathering was enough to arouse further suspicion, and several more individuals were accused of witchcraft as a result. Among them were Alice Nutter, a relatively wealthy woman from a nearby family who was accused of attending the meeting. Alice Nutter's inclusion in the trial stands out, as she was of higher social standing than the other accused, suggesting that even those with wealth and status were not immune from the reach of witchcraft accusations in a time of heightened fear. The trial took place at Lancaster Assizes in August 1612, presided over by two judges, Sir James Altham and Sir Edward Bromley. The trial was heavily biased against the accused, as was common in witchcraft trials at the time. The judges were eager to prove their loyalty to King James VIII by rooting out any potential threats of witchcraft and demonology. One of the most damning pieces of evidence against the accused came from the testimony of Janet Device, the 9-year-old daughter of Elizabeth Device and sister of James and Alison. Janet's testimony was unusual in that children were not typically allowed to testify in trials, but in this case, her age was seen as an advantage. It was believed that children were more likely to tell the truth because they were too innocent to lie. Janet's detailed accusations against her family members, including her own mother, were key to securing the convictions. Elizabeth Device, in particular, was singled out for her behaviour during the trial. She was said to have been loud, unruly and defiant, which only served to confirm the court's suspicions that she was in league with the devil. Her refusal to conform to expectations of female passivity and obedience may have contributed to the severity of her punishment. In total, 10 of the accused were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. They were Elizabeth Device, James Device, Alison Device, Anne Whittle, Chaddocks, Anne Redferner, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, John Bulcock, Jane Bulcock, Isabel Roby. Old Demdike, the matriarch of the Demdike family, had died in prison before the trial, while Janet Preston, another accused woman, was tried separately and executed earlier that year. On August 20th, 1612, the convicted witches were taken to Gallows Hill in Lancaster, where they were hanged. Hanging was the typical punishment for witchcraft in England, unlike in Scotland or continental Europe, where burning at the stake was more common. The execution marked the culmination of a trial that had gripped the local community with fear and fascination, leaving a lasting impact on the region. The Pendle Witch Trials were notable for several reasons. First, they were unusually large in scale. Most witch trials in England involved only 1 or 2 individuals, whereas the Pendle trial involved 12 accused. Second, they demonstrated how accusations of witchcraft could arise out of personal grudges and family rivalries, with the Demdike and Chaddocks families at the centre of the case. Third, the trial showcased the role of children as witnesses, with Janet Device's testimony playing a crucial role in the convictions. The Pendle Witches have since become part of English folklore, with Pendle Hill itself becoming a place associated with witchcraft and the supernatural. Over the centuries, the story of the Pendle Witches has been retold in books, plays and films, often focusing on the themes of fear, injustice and the persecution of marginalised women. The trials serve as a reminder of how easily fear and superstition can lead to tragic consequences, especially for those who live on the edges of society. Today, Pendle Hill remains a popular destination for those interested in the history of witchcraft, and the story of the Pendle Witches continues to resonate as a cautionary tale of the dangers of hysteria and scapegoating. The trials stand as a stark reminder of the human capacity for cruelty when faced with fear and the unknown, as well as the enduring power of storytelling to keep history alive. Intrigued by this dark chapter in history? Hit the like button, subscribe, and dive deeper into the world of the Pendle Witches. Explore the trials, visit Pendle Hill, and uncover the mysteries of England's infamous witch hunt.